If you have over $200,000 sitting stagnant in your bank, retirement account, or home equity, then you're literally losing money. On this show, you learn how to get that money working for you consistently and conservatively. Learn to grow your nest egg with your host, Shawn Winslow. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another Multifamily Monday episode. I'm your host, Shawn Winslow, and this is the Multifamily Money Podcast. What is going on, everybody? You know the drill. Every Monday, we're coming at you with all things multifamily real estate investing, sharing tips, tricks, and strategies on what this business is, how to do it right, and learning from people that are in the business. And today, that's one of those individuals. We have a guest on today. Before I get into that, a little housekeeping, as always. I don't charge anything for the show. Don't really do any advertising on this show. So the only way we can get in front of more people is for you to share it with those that you think can get value from the show, and also leave a rating and review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, give it a like and subscribe on YouTube. That's how we get in front of more ears and eyes. So I appreciate that. And so today's guest, my friend Hendra, came on to lay down some facts about multifamily real estate investing. He both syndicates and does JVs outside of the state he lives in. So for those that live in a market where you think, oh, it's too expensive to buy, I can't get anything to cash flow. Yeah, I just don't want to waste my time. This is the episode to listen to because he's in that market. He's in the San Francisco Bay Area market where crazy expensive, often is on the top, top of the chart for most expensive real estate markets. And so what did he do? He went outside of his market. He invested in other states. And we talk about what that's like, because obviously, real estate is not a passive thing, right? So you need to manage the property. And we talked about, having a team in the market that you're not in, right? You're not living there, but you're investing there. So you need a team, one that you can trust to manage and take care of your assets. So we talk a lot about that, which was a great conversation, and just kind of the industry itself and where we think it's going. So this is a great episode. So let's just get into it and welcome Hendra to the show. Hey, Hendra, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me, Shawn.
Thank you for coming on. I know you're a busy guy, but let's just get into it. Everyone loves a good origin story. So if you wouldn't mind sharing who you are, what you've done and how you got into multifamily real estate.
Yeah, so a little bit background of myself. I'm a technology consultant and still am. Back in the .com, I joined the .com company and then become a .buzz and then start, get on a hook like, hey, what are other side hustle we can do? Start looking into reading books. Obviously one thing that everybody been hearing is like Rich Dad Poor Dad by Kiyosaki is the one that opened up my eyes about the possibility. Start getting into real estate back then, and then we're able as accumulating about 8 to 10 single family home portfolio, but find that it's just very hard to scale it in terms of like portfolio and getting up, of the rat race. But eventually, I'm at a juncture that time that, I travel a lot. I work for Fortune 25 companies and then travel as a consultant, getting tired of working for somebody else. And end up like, I'm going to start looking into a business. But every time I turn around, I always stumble into real estate. And that's where the aha moment is start looking at like, one multifamily. And it started making sense. And I brought my wife on the journey together. That's how we got into it together. I mean, my wife was working as operating a restaurant with her friend, a golf course, triple the annual revenue, crushing it. But things like with our lifestyles of family, we got a 10-year-old son back then. I travel Monday to Thursday, and then when she operates a restaurant, she does a lot of catering and banquet event that take place on a weekend. And the quality of life is not there. I mean, the money is great, but at the end of the day, it's not just about how much you make, but it's also the work-life balance that we find it is missing in raising up a family. And I told my wife, like, let's get into a business venture. And then we stumbled across the multifamily, and that's how we got started. She's jumping in on a full-time basis right now and managing all the assets that we, all the property that we acquired. And that's how where we are today with the multifamily.
That's a great story. And to your point of like the work-life balance, I hear that so often. It was the case for myself too, is when I made a career change, it wasn't like, what am I going to do next for work that's going to, make me the most money? But it was more of like, what type of life do I want? And then what can I create around that for a career? And so then I started looking at other people and both friends, family members, acquaintances, people that I just, may have, gone by in the past, and they all had one thing in common. So the ones that had the flexible schedule and were doing well for themselves monetarily, they were all in real estate. So that for me, that's when the light bulb went off and I dug in.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about what you're doing now. And what always surprises me is you're balancing two things, right? You still have your career outside of multifamily. So what does that look like? You probably have a team. I'd love to hear that. How do you kind of balance that?
So I think one thing I really enjoy about multifamily is purely a team sport. When you're looking to single family, let's say you and I are aiming for the same asset, the same single family home, either going to you win or I win. But in some of the multifamily, obviously, it's a team sport. All my properties are out of states. Since the beginning of my journey in investing in real estate, though, we're never going to be able to get a cash flow out of California market. This is where I am. So now with the multifamily, obviously, providing to be, greater challenge, given that I don't know the market, I don't know the area, but having a team and having a partners out of state, that becoming a really, really crucial. But obviously, it really depends on how you're going to complement each other and grow together as a team. So having a team, obviously, that's going to be pretty key. And then even then, sometimes people forget that maybe you're competing for that same asset, but there's still a way that you feel like there's some gap and some value that you can bring and offer as your skill set, experience to the team that can augment the stabilization of the project. You can still ending up a team up, even though initially you're competing against each other, but eventually you can still work together if that's something, the relationship that you built. It's not going to happen all the time, but that's also on the table. If everybody think that this is it, I'm losing the deal, then the end of the world, the end of the deal, I'm done. That's not really true, because you can still partner up and taking it down together, the deals, as a team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love that part of what we do. That is a team sport, because no one person is great at everything, right? So it's great to combine skill sets. Like my partner within my business, he kind of fills in the gaps where I'm not so great, and vice versa, right? And so we really work well together. And then on top of that, when we partner with other groups, it's the same thing. And I think that that's the way you got to look at it, and that's what will really help you scale fast. And talking about scaling, so let's talk about it. Where was your first deal? How'd you find it? How'd you take it down? And then kind of how has it progressed after that in terms of more deals you've added on?
Yeah, so my first deal is actually, it's in Dallas Fort Worth. I met through we are co-GPing for that one. It's 300 units, 348 units to be precise, in Dallas Fort Worth. Met the partner through a networking. I'm part of the mastermind, and they're helping out. And I just congratulate my fellow mastermind member. And he said, and I asked, is there anything I can do to help? And then again, when you're offering yourself, make yourself able to help, the door going to be open, because a lot of people are thinking just want to find a deal. And that's a matter of fact, I do. Can you really help with the, all the CapEx fund that we're helping it and things like that. And that's like, sure, let me see what I can do. And that's how he got started. And then obviously we're being invited to be a co-GP on that deals together. Deal has come really stabilized right now. We are actually enjoying a good cash flow coming in after 3 years. So 3 years ago, Dallas market is still favorable. And right now it's a little bit tight to my liking. And I know some people are pretty bullish still on the DFW market. So we got a little bit of hiccup, obviously, but right now property stabilized really good. One of the issue because of the older boiler, and obviously when you have like one building, one boiler, it's basically just killing our expenses, right? Yeah. So that's the reason why you have to go through the HVAC replacement, and then changing some windows to keep it a little more energy efficient. And after that, we just refinance a little bit, return some of the capital, and then been stabilizing right now.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And that goes to the point of teaming up in partnerships, is that you can help fill these gaps that are actually really important. And most people might not look at it that way, but it is. There's so much to do on these big deals that not one person or group can necessarily do it themselves, at least not well. So that's great. So then what happened next in terms of scaling your business?
Yeah, so that been on the syndication side, but eventually, we were started shifting, primarily focused on the JV. A lot of people think like, hey, number of doors is pretty important. Don't get me wrong, sounds really great, but for us, for us personally, me and my wife, our portfolio, we're trying to balance out our portfolio every now and then. So just some of the syndication and some of the JV. So obviously the JV is something that we're going to buy and hold a little bit longer rather than 5 to 7 year hold. Then we sell it, which is great. But the other portion of our portfolio for multifamily, we're trying to hold it a little bit longer. Then the play is a little bit different. Then it's a smaller unit too. We're talking about 40 to 50 units apartment that we're aiming for. So the play, that's been the focus the last 18 to 24 months for us, just shifting into a joint venture property.
Have you noticed? I've heard this, and I don't know if it's the truth or not, but some people say that smaller multis, like smaller than that, there's a lot of competition because it's a lot of people get into it, and then the bigger ones, there's like big, there's less competition because there's fewer players, and the 100 to probably 200, it's really competitive. And then some say the 80 or maybe 60 to 20 to 60, it's a little less competitive because there's again the smaller people, it's too big for them, and then the guys that go around for the big stuff, it's too small for them. Is that the case, or is it still just as competitive?
I guess it really depends market to market specific, right? Yeah. If you're, for example, like in city of San Francisco or Bay Area, Northern California, where I am, if you're aiming for 60 plus units, then the deal, unless you're a private equity or hedge fund, the deal is not going to pencil out.
That's a massive deal in that market.
Yeah, it's a massive deal. Yeah. But if you're looking for a value add syndication, I got a couple of friends that's actually doing it in days in and out. In the Bay Area or LA market, like in the 20 to 30 range. So 20 to 30 doors range, right? Because they got a different model. They got a different way to do a value add, the buyout tenant and so forth, right? That thing working out. They know how to underwrite it. So I guess it really depends market to market specifically. It's not going to be all across the nation though. I know that in the area that I am right now, 40 units tend to be there's some competition still, but it's not going to be heavily when people like looking for 80 to 100 units. Again, market specific though, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And what is, because I've thought about looking at that just because, you still can make a killing on that size deal, still, the same business model, except you generally don't have on-site staff, right? Depending on the deal, obviously different markets, right? But so how's that been for you? Because you're like you mentioned, you're investing out of state. Do you have like a boots on the ground partner, or how are you running that?
So yeah, that's you brought up a very good point, because now I think that's becoming a catch-22, right? Every time you get into a new market, because like, oh yeah, that's some Bay Area, California, way too expensive. I'm going to get out of states, and then they forget when you go out of states, like who's going to be your team that you partner up. I was fortunate enough when we entering to the market that where I am in Midwest, we found a good property manager that want to grow together with us. So we are actually the first multifamily customer for them. They primarily the owner is actually coming from a self-storage operation in the past. He's starting up his own property management, and they're primarily catered toward like industrial and as well as offices. So we are actually the first multifamily customer for them. We took our chance, and then he took also a chance from us. And then, but it worked out really well. It's a chemistry still there, and then we like the way their thought process, the way they approach things, especially for minimizing the expenses and making suggesting any improvement and so forth. Is like thinking like as an owner. So that's the reason we like it. And from that kind of partnership, we grow. And obviously, when we expand, we're trying to expand in the market itself, and then within 2-3 hours. When the moment that 12 months ago, he expressed the interest to expand to the, to 3 hours drive radius. And we took our chances like, hey, maybe we can expand our market that way too. So to answer your question, yeah, having a team, it's good, but also having a good vendor team that can you partner up and scale up together with you, that's going to be pretty key. Because that way, then you can have not only just operational wise that only started with 20 units or become bigger, because you understand that this is a scalable business. You need to think about scalability. It's not just going to taking like 28 and I'm done, because they're going to be more thing like that too. I mean, our sweet spot originally going to be in the 40s. But in some market that we have our presence, then we can scale down a little bit, then adding it to the scalability of the overall property ownership within that market. We took down 20 units recently because we already have like 68 units in the area. So we know that the scalability is there to help out, rather than taking a small and scale up there. Yeah,
I've actually started to do the same thing. In markets where we have good scale already, I've actually started to look at smaller stuff I normally wouldn't look at, but it's because we already have the scale there. So it just makes sense, whereas if I was entering a new market, I wouldn't look at it because you can't.
Yeah. And that gives you a competitive advantage, right? Because like, yeah, that's too small. I don't want it. But hey, I already got like 80 units now. It makes sense now. That way then I can share the staff rather than incurring more. Yeah.
Exactly. Full resource, share resources, 100%. And that's really this. Like that's how you can exponentially scale. Like you can still scale throughout different markets, and people do it all the time, but you can really scale fast when you're in a few markets that you just grow in there. Because Absolutely. Sharing those resources, not only just that, but you're building relationships within the market. You really get to know that market like the back of your hand. You can make decisions with a level of comfort that you probably wouldn't be able to in markets that you don't know well. And that just helps when you have that speed, right? And you know what rents you can get. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and then having a good partnership also help. I mean, we recently last year, we got it from our network. Like they're a property owner. They want to selling 24 units, and it came across to my wife, and then my wife looked into it. It's like looks pretty good. Bring it over to our property manager, and our property manager obviously came with feedback like it's good property, it's very well maintained. However, though, that's in the rental alley. So pretty much like you might be competing against many other property that's surrounding area though. So I would not suggest you to take that property. So that kind of good relationship because you have a good chemistry, and then they also want to grow together, not just like, hey, I'll manage it, whether you make money or not, that's a secondary for me, but because have the same interests that really help you to scale up also really fast that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. And to me, that's what it's about too. It just makes it, scaling that way just makes it easier for everyone. It makes it obviously for you, but also for your team members too. And I've done it before where you keep building new teams. It's just not efficient or effective of anyone's time, really. It takes so much time and trust to do that. So I feel once you find a good team, to just go, all in with that team, to the extent you can. So I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that, or kind of where you're looking to progress now. Is it to focus in those markets you're already in, or is it to expand a little outside of those as well?
So right now, we are going to be focusing on the market that we are in. I mean, we got a team established. I got involved in multiple deals, but in terms of the partnership, though, I'm a little bit picky on the partnership.
Yeah.
The reason is a lot of people are dying and hunger for deals, which is, I don't blame them, right? That's the reason why they want to get into multifamily and they cannot find anything. So any deal will sounds pretty good. They jump on it. As long as the pencil out, they'll jump on it. But people forget that you're going to be married to that partnership for quite some time. It's not just like 1 year or 2 year you're done, and then especially if you're talking about generational wealth property that could be lifetime, then you want to make sure that you have the alignment on the value and the goal also.
100%. Yeah. And I see that, Hendra, I see that too, where it kind of almost feels like desperation to some extent, right? From not from everybody, but for some people, where they're just eager to get into a deal, which I do get, or they're eager to pull you into their deal, and it's like, hey man, you just sent me a LinkedIn message. That doesn't mean I'm ready to go. We gotta date first before we get married here, because that's to me that's what it is. It's a marriage. Once you're on a GP team, that's a marriage for probably 5 years. To your point, you got to be aligned in many ways. Obviously, business plan wise, but also to me, it's also morals too. Like you're aligned in that sense too with those individuals, and you can't develop that from one LinkedIn, correspondence or not even really one Zoom call either. I think it takes some time.
No, absolutely. I mean, one thing that you can test, like for example, like I typically put in a rule like, I need to get back to people within 24 hours. If the person that reach out to you and then you respond back and you didn't hear back for, up to many days, then probably it's like, that's not a good sign to begin with to partner up.
True. That's true. And that's a great way to assess it too, is like how they do the little things, how anyone, does the little things is kind of most likely how you're going to do anything. Right. So
yeah,
important. Yeah. So you continuing to do a combination of syndication and JV going forward. I kind of like that approach. I've done that to a little bit to an extent too, like with my own personal portfolio, because I think it's smart.
Yeah, I think depending on the market cycle right now, the last few acquisitions they've done have to be a JV. Well, we're open for syndication, but right now, whatever pencil out right now, given that the market condition and rate condition too.
So talking about market cycles, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but two things, like where do you feel things are kind of headed? Obviously, there's a lot up in the air with that, and then two, how are you positioning yourself? Are there any kind of like guardrails you're putting up, or kind of criteria to follow?
Yeah, I think market cycle wise, getting a capital is becoming a little bit challenging, right? Or maybe even though you have a good relationship with the community bank or credit union, it's easier. However, doesn't really change the fact that rate has gone up a lot compared to like 2-3 years ago. So I think one thing that it's going to become tighter and tighter in terms of the underwriting. We just need to be more creative and more conservative in terms of like expenses. Like how can we tighten up the expenses even more? That's how I approach things. And then also in terms of like rent bump. I mean, in the past we've been underwriting it with the rent bump, 5-7%, and some people are even more aggressive, like about 10-15%. And then especially after the pandemic hits, it's like, oh yeah, nobody want to move. Oh, we just bump it up, thing like that, and it works out really well. I think we are in the different cycle right now that potentially also that people forget that cap rate can also be expand at this market right now with the given the inflation thing like that. People think like, oh yeah, inflation is 7-8%, and then drop a little bit to 6.5%. I think last time I checked. But again, don't anticipate that rent growth is gonna be go in parallel with that one too. So be conservative, be human too as a property owner, knowing that it's more expensive to getting a new tenant rather than retain one. Now, but another thing that you can do, you can try to tighten up the expenses, right? Instead of going crazy with all the value add and upgrading like that, trying to make it what is the goal to begin with when you acquire a property. For us, we just want to create safe and clean and still affordable for the market over there. So meaning like we're gonna go with the average rent in the market without going overboard, thing like that. So how can we do that? We trying to tighten up the expenses. Anything that we know that's going to be providing any much value in return, then we're trying to not do it. But obviously, we're trying to clean it up. The property is still going to be desirable for our resident, our customer in this case, going to remain with the property, and then they don't mind to get a rent bump a little bit because we give them something in return.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. The human aspect too is very important. Both just because they're your customer, it's a place where they're living. You need to take care of them, and to your point, everything's getting more expensive. And so sometimes you just got to also the turnover, your point of turnover, that's usually what'll kill the deal, right? If you have a lot of turnover. So yeah, it is cheaper just to keep them there. Maybe not even raise it at all or raise it minimal versus trying to raise a lot and have to go find someone else. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's not always brought up. And it's just the fact, like I've been talking about this too. It's just there's a point where you just can't raise it, right? Like your model might tell you can, but there's just a point where people just can't afford that anymore. And yeah, they might sign a lease with you, but then your collections are going to dip. So I think you got to be smart about that. And right now we're not really underwriting rent growth, or at least very, very, very minimal. And it's usually been negated by expense growth. So, and I think that's what we're doing right now, just because I feel like there's an inflection point. Obviously, we're looking for like a loss to lease play. So there is that aspect, but from a pure organic rent growth, we're not really, underwriting that. So I think that is smart. But yeah, and it's who knows what's going to happen, right? And I think there's a lagging effect to this all too. Like to your point, inflation has receded, but we don't really know what that's going to entail for the industry. And I think there's just a lagging effect to see that. All right, Hendra, before I ask you the final question, where can the listeners find you?
They can reach out to me through social media. My handle at the Instagram is Hendra T. Facebook, Hendra Tambunan, or they can reach out to our website, IdeaBox Capital, IdeaBoxCapital.com. And I'm going to give my cell phone number if somebody want to text me, and then feel free to reach out if you're going to get any questions or anything I can help them with. 510-270-2920.
That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. And yeah, I would reach out if you guys have questions for sure. All right. You ready for the lightning round here?
All right, let's do it, Shawn.
All right, let's do it. All right. First one, why multifamily real estate as an investment deal? Because there's obviously a lot of investment vehicles out there. And even just within the real estate asset class itself, there's a lot of different asset classes. So why multifamily? And then what type of life has it provided you so far? And what type of life do you see it providing in the future?
One thing that I like about multifamily is the economy of scales. Because the way I see it, in the past, I consider myself investing in single family home. But right now, I consider myself as a real estate entrepreneur because I can see it just more than just like buying a property, but what can I do with this property? How can I make it really, really solving the housing crisis that our nation is facing right now through multifamily, through real estate apartment, right? That's the way I see it. And again, I'm serving a customer, not just a tenant or a renter in this case, which is the single family home that's pretty common. But here, I'm serving a customer, a resident in my apartment, and by still making it profitable, adjusting between the income and expenses, manageable expenses in this case. So economy of scales is one thing that intrigued me about multifamily to begin with.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it for that too. They're like their own businesses, right? Each property is like its own business, and you can just keep scaling that. Can you use the same systems and processes that you've already created? Awesome. And so what type of lifestyle does this afford you, or what type of lifestyle do you view it affording you one day?
So obviously, the cash flow it's rewarding, but I think one thing that really another part of that rewarding for me, I'm coming like with, if you ask my wife, she probably gonna tell you like, I have so many crazy ideas, and given that this is I treated a business, there's so many ways that crazy ideas, or at least some ideas that I can implement. It's just, for me, it's like becoming like I wouldn't call it like a incubation lab, but I just a lot thinking about like, how about doing this, how about doing that, what can we do to minimize the expenses, how can we maximize the revenue, and so forth. So for me, that is it's also as rewarding as the passive income and the equity also is generated.
Yeah.
That's really given a greater, I would say, great satisfaction and rewarding for me in that sense.
Oh, I love it. Love it. All right. Next question. What is a common mistake you see people make in this business, or even if there's a mistake you've made that you want to share?
I would say they're not seeing, they're not begin multifamily with the end in mind. What I mean is like when you're starting it, sometimes you just like, I need to go into multifamily. I need to buy a property. I need to acquire a property. That's great. But what are you going to do with it? I mean, it's totally different than you're gonna play as a syndicator, or you're just going to be investing as an LP, or you just want to buying it as a partnership, it's JV. But you got to know what is your end goal for you. I mean, Shawn, we have a conversation here right now, and then our goal, even though we are in the same business together, our angle is totally different, though. Some people are having a goal like, hey, I want to get like $1 million cash. Why? So I can go somewhere overseas and I'm going to be retired happy. But some people's like, nope, I don't really care about that one. I'm just preparing for generational wealth. I'm happy with the cash flow that I'm getting right now, but I'm trying to build equity, or eventually that's going to be for my grandkids' generation, and so forth. So having the end in mind, that really help you to navigate the journey you're going to take. The thing about multifamily or real estate as a tools, the way you navigate it and the way you approach it going to be different when you have an end in mind, end game in mind.
Yeah, that's so true, and I think that's smart, Hendra, because anything in life you should know where you're headed before you start, right?
Absolutely.
I love that. All right, number 3. What is a resource that you would tell someone maybe who's new getting into this, whether they're active or passive, something they should check out?
Well, there are quite a few books. I mean, for me, gaining knowledge for getting educated, right, is pretty crucial. A lot of people want to jump into coaching or mastermind, which is fine. But start with the book. I know I'm going to give you a book. Number one, Wheelbarrow Profit. That's the book that got me started. It's written by Jake Stenziano and Gino Barbaro. That's a good book. It's available. It's like I think like $19 in Amazon. Read it. See if you like that kind of business model, and then if you like it, then start looking into mentorship and coaching, right? Because then you gotta, before you invest in multifamily, invest in yourself first, and then from that, or even invest in mastermind. Once you're fully educated, be out there, connected with people, and try to see what kind of value that you can add and augment the team. And that's how you're going to get a deal flow coming in. I'm in a place in California that I know I will never going to get a deal over here to begin with, but I'm going to be positioning myself a little bit differently because now I have my education. I got a friend and a family who may be interested, that I can team up together and partner up with the people that have our deals. That's how the deal flow can start coming in the moment you put yourself out there. So I would say that get educated, get connected with people, and that's how you get started in this business.
All right, last question. So if you had a time machine, you could go back, speak to your younger self, you give yourself one piece of financial advice, because after all, this is also a personal finance show. What would that one piece of financial advice be?
Well, I would say that just like what I just said, get educated, and then I'm probably going to add like getting into multifamily a lot sooner than what I know today. So that's one thing. And then secondly, also get connected with people. Again, when I started, if I look back and reflect, many times that I just never get myself educated to begin with. My method, I was joking with my wife, like when I started into single family back then, the method I use is just like basically acquire, invest, and pray, because I never really understand about the fundamental data of what the economic of the local market, the population growth, and so forth, right? Knowing what I know today, I would approach things differently. And also getting to know people, getting to learn from each other. I think a lot of time that people forget that people are readily available. Not all of them, but most of the time, people are readily available to help you out and share their knowledge with you for free. And as long as you know how to approach them, as long as you know that you offer something that they can help them too. I actually challenged my son. I got a 15-year-old son now. My son is 15 years old. Last year, I took him to boot camp for multifamily. And to my surprise, I see he want to get involved now, and then but again, teenager being teenagers, sometimes he's just like, yes, I'm eager. And then next, like, yeah, I don't know, but at least he's showing some interest, like, hey, I want to learn more about real estate. I want to learn more about multifamily.
That's great.
Which is a great thing. I purposely asked him when I took him to the boot camp. I purposely tell him like, you're coming in on my dime, but I want you to have a homework. I want you to go to all my friends and ask them like exactly the same thing you asked me earlier. If you can give yourself, what would be the advice you give to yourself at my age if you can turn back your time?
Yeah,
and he got all the golden advice from people like, hey, listen to your parents, find your passion, get educated, and so forth. And he learned it, from somebody else, not his parent, but something he doesn't want to listen to.
Right. Yeah. They got to hear it from someone else, right? Even if you're saying
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome. I'm going to remember that for one day. I like that. That's amazing. Well, Hendra, I really appreciate you sharing that, but also this whole show. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me, Shawn.
And listeners, as you know, as I always say, Easy doesn't pay well, and instant gratification is self-destructive. So not only get out there and work hard for your money, but have your money work hard for you. So we can all create the lives of our dreams and make this world a better place. All right, everybody, catch you on the next one.
Hey, this is Shawn Winslow. After being in the financial service industry for years and having candid conversations with good people just like you, I realized that so many of us are wanting an investment strategy that provides solid returns and consistent income without the bumps in the road. There's little known secret that your financial advisor doesn't want you to know. There is investment out there that is less volatile and the returns are stronger. Get more details by going to greenbriercg.com and clicking on the free e-report. And by the way, if this show has provided you any value, then feel free to leave an honest written review and of course share it with a friend who needs it. See you next week for another great show.